You will never be criticized by someone who's doing more than you. Unfortunately, we cannot hate on all the parts of ourselves that we don't like and still love ourselves at the same time. It doesn't work that way. If you're not willing to support me in this moment and you just want to throw some advice at me, not interested. I'm just not interested. If perfectionism is in the driver's seat, then in the passenger seat is shame and in the back seat is fear. Please know for everyone, you will never be criticized by someone who's doing more than you.
Right, correct.
You are criticized by somebody who your action is triggering something that they're not doing. If it's the end of my life, will I regret if I didn't do this? And if the answer is yes, then I say yes and I figure it out. Unbothered means that you can still feel all things at once. You can have a contraction and expansion and learn how to regulate so that you can hold it all.
Hi, babes. Welcome back to the Chase Life with Kelly show. I am your host, Kelly Chase. We have an incredible guest on the show with us this week. Her name is Marsha Vanwynsberghe, and she is the founder of Outspoken, a leadership platform that helps female entrepreneurs become global thought leaders through coaching, speaking, writing, and publishing. As an NLP trainer, six-time best-selling author, and boutique publisher, she equips clients to rewire their thoughts, beliefs, and stories to rise with confidence. Her signature offerings, Outspoken NLP Coaching Certification and Write Your Damn Book Mastermind, guide leaders to reprogram their stories and build powerful platforms to impact, serve, and support others. She also provides hands-on publishing support, helping authors edit, design, and launch their books through Outspoken Publishing. Marsha shares tools to shift subconscious patterns and build impact-driven businesses rooted in visibility, radical responsibility, and legacy through her podcast, Own Your Choices, Own Your Life. Welcome to the show. All right. It is so good to see you again. I know I was just on your show recently, and this is actually going to come out probably before our episode.
I
But
love it.
Marsha, welcome to the show. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me, Kelly. We just had such a great conversation. So I'm thrilled to be on this end of the mic.
Yeah, no, okay. So tell my listeners like who you are, kind of give us a lowdown of your backstory and what you do now.
Perfect. So let me see how far back I take it. Let me go back this way. About 12, 13 years ago, I was a parent dealing with teen substance abuse. It kind of came out of left field. It was not in the plan, not what I expected we would be dealing with. But at that time, I was working as a registered kinesiologist and working on taking care of clients, showing up at work at 6 a.m. every day, supporting clients through rehab and having this, face that the world saw. But then over here, having life was very chaotic. And I was looking and searching for answers. And during that time, I found myself through a lot of different programs and a lot of different counselors and starting to be in a space of like turning over every rock possible. And in a small setting, the school asked me if I would come in and talk to a group of parents. And in that moment of talking to other parents, there was this strange relief of speaking and sharing my story out loud. And I couldn't quite understand, like I felt like that was helpful and it felt good, but I'm not going to, do that outside of anything that was safe. And
Mm,
I remember a friend saying to me, there was over a number of years that all of a sudden I started to share it a little bit more and share a little bit more.
yeah.
And I found that there was a lot of people like me. Maybe they didn't have my story, but they had stories that they were hiding in, they were hiding behind. And I felt like we have this whole collection of people who are hiding shame stories, thinking that they're the only people in the world who are struggling when it's just not true. And it started to open up my eyes of thinking that maybe I could do something with this. Like maybe I'm meant to do something with this. So around 2015, I started speaking on different stages and it started to grow and I started writing collaborative chapters. And in 2016, I had the brilliant idea that I would write a solo book and I was so proud of this idea. And I always say be very careful who you share your ideas with, because most people in my life thought it was absolutely crazy to even consider writing a personal story. And I swear whether my higher self, future self, whatever you want to call it, I swear she knew. And so I wrote it and it went on to, it was a six-time bestseller, hit a lot of different categories and a lot of exposure. My nervous system wasn't ready for the exposure. And that was part of what, like, different story, but how I connected to what we spoke about on my show. I hadn't prepped for how to receive that and how to have that kind of coverage. And that's the thing is that, we learn we can push through a lot of things. We can, but our nervous system is not designed to push nonstop. And that allowed me to slow down a little bit and really recognize the story we've walked through and what that has looked like. So that just continued through the process over the next couple of years. And then in 2020, I ended up losing my job overnight.
Mm,
And then I went full time into the online space. And that has evolved probably 10 times over in the last 5 years, which it does. And now I'm really deep in the work of NLP and coaching and helping people to write and share their stories, because I think that we're all connected by our stories.
absolutely. We are. We
Mhm.
definitely are. The more that, I mean, it's funny how, we can like preach it, but sometimes we don't take our own advice,
Oh, yeah. Oh,
sometimes.
yeah.
And I'm definitely guilty of doing that. Because I felt like over the last like couple of years, and I think I may have said this on your show, but there are parts of me that felt like kind of stifled and suppressed because the fact I wasn't necessarily like sharing my story. And I kept, I would take seasons with the podcast, and when I like relaunched it this past season, I was like, I feel like I'm going to do a lot more solo episodes because I'm like, I have so much to talk about. I have so much to say. I want to connect with people like on with my storytelling and like what's going
Yeah.
on with me. So that was kind of the idea behind why I, not pivoted, but decided to like, hey, let's do a little bit more solo, have guests also, but like, let's focus on that for a little while. And it has been so great, but it's so funny. Like I still feel stifled sometimes. Like, and I'm like, I could literally just be on my Instagram like live all day probably and just talk to my audience. Like I
Mhm.
just like even now too, I had a call earlier today with this girl I'm gonna start working with, and we were just brainstorming on ideas. And I'm like I'll be sitting in a client call because I work a 9 to 5. I'll be sitting there and I'm like, my brain's like going out in outer space. And I'm like, oh my God, like I want to be creating content right now. Like I want to be sharing all the things I know and like all the stories and like how this has really helped me in my life in this area and this area and this area, and like just post it. And it's like, okay, I'm gonna have to sit down like every day and knock out like 30 minutes and just record. And that's kind of what I did this morning. While I was like getting ready, I just like put my phone up. I was like, Kelly, just do it. Have the discipline and do it. And I recorded myself just kind of going on a rant. And I'm like, Kelly, cool. Now I pull clips.
Yep.
That's like a part of me. I'm like, great, now I have to go back and edit everything. But I want to be able to like really start being more expressive and sharing more of my story, because you're right, it's healing for not only the self but so much for other people to be seen in your work too.
I had no idea. I honestly had no idea. I felt like, there's a lot of times we think we're the only person who is going through something, but it wasn't until I started to do that that it was like, okay, yes, it helped me connect with so many incredible people. And it was the start of a healing journey that I didn't even know I was starting.
Wow,
Hmm.
that's incredible. Yeah. So how did you, well, a couple of things came up for me while you were talking, as far as like when you left your job and started pursuing your own business. How was that transition for you at first?
It was really messy. It was really, really messy. And again, I don't think that people talk enough about that because it's glamorized as, leave the job and have this. I would say probably about the year before I left, I was writing almost every day in a journal that I knew the end of my job was coming. And this was 27 years. Okay. So I knew it was coming, but I didn't understand how. and I didn't know why or when, but I could feel myself on my way to work feeling like I don't want to do this anymore, but I didn't know what else I was going to do. And then with my career at that time, when the pandemic came in, we were banned from work and we were banned from even working on Zoom. Another story, anyways. So we can, and over the course of those months, I started to dabble and figure out, okay, how can I figure out this online space? What does it look like?
Yeah.
And then secretly, in full transparency, behind the scenes, I was prepping for a back surgery, an emergency back surgery that I didn't know I needed because I couldn't get the medical test to know, but I knew that something was wrong. And it kept getting canceled and kept getting canceled. And so, long story short, I actually believe that year was entirely designed for me the way it was meant to go because I couldn't go back to work. Most people didn't see me other than a screen. I was struggling with walking. I was really struggling with moving, and I knew something was wrong, but I didn't understand what it was. And
Mm.
I was that person who had spent her life like pushing to create, to, get something done, to be in a space. And I know that hard work is part of everything that we do, but I also had this story running that I had to work hard and burn out in order to succeed.
Yeah.
And that, part of our stories come from family and from other people, but they come from our own interpretation at the same time. And so while I was prepping for back surgery, while that happened, most people didn't know what was going on in my life. And I'm very much open and vulnerable. But this was a piece I never felt ready to share yet because I didn't know what was happening.
Yeah.
And so when it did, and I was in the hospital, I remember literally learning how to walk again and seeing information about NLP. And the way it was spoke to me, the way I interpreted it was, if you have been struggling with repeat stories, that
Yeah.
is really our 95% of our subconscious mind. You're in this constant loop of, same beliefs, same thoughts, same actions, and you can't seem to break it. So you think that you have to work harder, which is the 5%. That's the conscious mind. But until you actually address what's going on in the subconscious mind, you never hit the goals that you want to achieve. And so it spoke to me because I also realized that I'd spent the last, probably, I don't know, maybe 7, 8 years at that point, pushing really hard to find a solution, to help everyone in my life, that I never stopped to look at what stories were running on repeat, what thoughts were on repeat, and how could I work to heal that. And that's what led me down this road. And I love that I didn't take it to build a business, to coach others. I did it for me. I literally did it for me, which I think is why it was actually so transformational because I didn't have the intention that I have to build a business out of this. It was like, no, no, the world is going to pause right now while I learn how to walk. I'm going to
Right.
figure out, I'm going to figure out what stories have been running. And that's when I really started to understand the subconscious mind. And I think that's when my healing took a completely deeper level than what it did before.
Wow, I love that. I think it's interesting that you said that you did it for you
Mhm.
because when I went through health coaching school 12 years ago, that was it for me. I mean, granted, my mom at the time, she had gone through the same institute and she was like, basically encouraging me to go through and get my certification. But she was like, kind of like, if you don't do anything with it, business wise, like at least you have all this like newfound knowledge. And I was
Mhm.
like, okay, sure. And it did, like it helped me significantly. And it's interesting. I don't think it at the time when I did go through the program, like how I wasn't like into personal development or things like that. Like it was
Mhm.
almost like I was going through school again. And so there were parts of it that I probably really wasn't paying attention
Yeah.
to and whatever. And then fast forward, 10 years nearly, and I start working with these coaches and start learning more about the subconscious mind and all of this. And in one of the Bob Proctor programs that I went through, it showed the matrix and like this little stick figure and everything. And I was cleaning out a room, like a closet one day, and I come across my old health coaching, one of my books, and I'm just flipping through it because I was like, okay, should I keep this? Should I give it away?
Mhm.
And the stick figure is in one of the pages. And I was like, I don't remember seeing that. I definitely learned about this 10 years ago, but I'm really learning it now. Like it's so fascinating how, we truly are, like messengers. Like it has to be in the right time for you to like
Mhm.
learn the lesson or for you to be awakened to it, be open to receive and awakened to the thought or the method or the approach or something. And I just love that I'm glad that you didn't have this like motive behind, because I think it could have like muddied things in a sense, because you're like, oh, well, I need to learn this to do this versus like, let me just do this. And I feel like in that regard, you like fully integrated and embodied the work.
Mhm. I think that's the missing piece for a lot of people. And I certainly have had that missing piece many
Yeah.
times. I really think that you are always the student first, right?
Yeah.
You're always a student. Then you can be a client and then you can be a teacher. Like you can't
Mhm.
take, I really don't believe you can take anyone, you can't take a client somewhere you've never gone. If you have not done that work on yourself, or whether you've just allowed yourself to explore and go deeper, you can't take your client there. So don't go build a business when you haven't done those parts of it. I was exposed to NLP probably even 10 years ago, and I didn't know it was NLP. I didn't understand that, but it was listening to Tony Robbins is what I really where some of this started. He wasn't the only person. But the one thing that really stuck with me was he talked about language, and what are some of the words that you're saying on repeat every day? Because they are really dictating what you're seeing, right? And how things are showing up in your life. And for me, as a parent in the situation that I was in, I felt stuck. I was so stuck, but stuck was literally the only word I said all day long. Like,
Yeah.
and so no wonder we feel the way that we do. So I was early exposed to it, but I didn't know what it was. And then again in 2020 as a student, and I took my practitioners and then I decided to take my master practitioners. And then all of a sudden I started to have these feelings of, what if I could help teach this to other people? Like, what if this was something, and it has become definitely that's the path that it has become
Mhm.
because we all have a brain, we all have a subconscious mind, we all have looping negative thoughts that we are stuck on every single day, no matter how much work that we do. And we all need to learn how to reframe our thoughts so that we can, move towards what we want versus what we don't want. Like we are great. Humans are great at talking about all the things that we don't want, right? I
Yeah,
don't want debt. I don't want bad clients.
exactly.
I don't want this. I don't want this. It's interesting sometimes when I start with a client, they'll go on a rampage of that. And then, our subconscious mind doesn't understand negative. So I'll say, okay, thank you for sharing all that with me. What do you want now? Do you know how many times people are like, I don't know. I just don't want that. I don't want this. I'm like, let's talk about what you want. And it's a complete language flip because it's something that unless someone has opened your eyes to that or shared that with you, I wasn't doing it. I didn't even know. But some of the things that you can learn through this work are so simple that you're doing every day. A little bit of a science geek, like we have 60 to 80,000 thoughts a day. That's the size of two average books. So if you think about, that many thoughts a day, I think it's 80 to 90% of them are repeated from all of the days before, and 90% of those are negative. And that is before the world gets us. So if you're watching like negative news, you're listening to like negative energy, and then you're doing that on top of it, the thing is that the solution that you're searching for could be literally right in front of you, and you won't see it because you're so busy talking about all the things that didn't work
Right.
instead of where you want to go instead.
That is so true. That's so true. Yeah, I went through well, first, before I share my story, you're like, can you explain what NLP is to
Mhm.
my audience who may be like, what does she keep talking about?
No problem at all. I should have done that sooner, but
Yeah.
no problem at all.
Okay.
So, like NLP is neuro-linguistic programming. It is the language that we use we bring in all of our information, the language that we use to create the world that we want around us. This is not about just manifestation and talking about things. It's like really understanding how we take in all the information that we do, the programs that we run on. We all have very set programs that we run on to create the world that we see around us. And when you start to really look at like the language that you're using, how you're speaking, what you're focusing on, it's unreal how so much of us is programmed into things that we don't want to have.
Yeah. It's so
Mhm.
true. It's true. the I went through a course a couple of years ago, and from my first coach that I ever worked with, she actually has like a whole like you can become a certified like
Yep.
NLP practitioner and Reiki and EFT and all of that, hypnosis and whatnot. And that was something NLP, that was like our first chapter more or less. And on our group call, she had us all like write down what we're wanting. And of course, like I think I started to write out like, well, I don't want this, and
Mm-hmm.
other people were obviously doing the same thing, or she would like call someone up to speak on the Zoom call and that's how they would start. Like, what do you want? Well, I don't want to,
Mm-hmm.
be single anymore. Or I don't want this. And she's like, mm-mm-mm. What do you want? Tell me only what you want. And it was actually very challenging for many
Mm-hmm.
of us because yes, that is like our programming. That's like what we do, what we hear, what we see. Like, well, I don't want that. I don't want that. I don't want that. It's all about that. But like and then we're technically manifesting everything. Like you said, it's like the subconscious doesn't know the negative. So it's like it just hears I want. It doesn't hear the don't.
It doesn't hear don't. And I often say, and people say, well, I don't think that's true. And I'm like, well, I say, don't think of a purple elephant. And what did you think of as a purple elephant? That's literally how our brain works. It's not
Right.
because you're wrong. It's just that's literally how it works. And now, if you're so clear on speaking about what you don't want and you're stuck in a bit of a trauma story, like there, I mean, some people are very, it was very traumatic what we were going through. So I knew what I didn't want. But to even think about speaking about something different felt weird because we were living in such a crisis time. And
Mhm.
that I see a lot of clients like that who are walking through something really difficult and they can't even fathom a life outside of what they're in.
Right.
And then it does take work. That's where a lot of the submodalities and the things that we use in NLP can help you to actually create change at the subconscious level so that you can find a way to speak about what you want instead. And
Mhm.
so it is work, but it's also work to think the same negative thought over and over. So that's how I look at it. People go, "Do I have to do this every day?" And I'm like, "Well, do you think every day? Because if you do, then I'm a bit of a smartass. But if you do, then yes, I would suggest it because you've spent a lot of time buying into something here. Now, one more thing too, the subconscious mind loves like so that's 95% of who we are. And so our conscious mind is where we set our goals from. And that is like the goal setter. We're great at setting goals as humans. The goal getter is the 95%. The thing is that the subconscious mind is built to keep you safe. It's 100% built to keep you safe. And so staying safe means choosing things that are like safe, predictable, and familiar. So
Mhm.
when you set a goal that is outside of something that you have ever done before, it can be like, oh my God, I'm so excited. I'm so excited. I'm going to go do this thing. And then the second you have a pause moment, your subconscious mind is like, no, we're not, like a board. That's not safe. You have
Right.
to train it that it is safe to go after what you want,
Mhm.
or you will always choose what is safe, predictable, and familiar.
Right. That's so true.
Mhm.
I love that. That we're like thinking about all my goals now.
It will make you think differently, and I
It
love it for
does.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's fascinating. How, like, when you, what am I trying to do? It's like maybe like the awakening moment or like the transformation moment, like something that made you be like, oh, this is working. Like, do you remember that moment?
Well, I can think of one of those moments, and it was a couple of them. But one in particular is when all of a sudden I started to be, exposed to something that was a stressor or exposed to something that would be a trigger, the kind of trigger that I often joked that, I mean, I'm an Aries and I have a little bit of a spiciness to me that I could feel myself always, I say spitfire because I was like very reactive. That was my energy. And eventually I started to recognize that, wait, I'm fighting every battle that I don't need to fight, and I'm draining myself in the process. So all of a sudden, I started to recognize that I'm not going after every battle to prove that I'm right. I'm not fighting for, my worth or fighting to prove that I'm right. I started to care less of what other people thought about me, and I knew that what I was doing was the right thing and I wasn't doing it for approval for others. But if when I was in situations that would have normally triggered me and created like this visceral response of being upset and frustrated, they weren't doing that. And I was like, oh, interesting. I'm noticing that my reaction is changing. Even so much so that I was around family once and somebody said something and they all looked at me and they're like, so aren't you gonna, like, don't you have something to say? And I'm like, not really. No. And they said, we thought for sure you would be the person who would like, you would jump in, you would have an argument, you would, and because that's who I was. And all of a
Mm,
sudden I went, no, that's because I'm changing. I am changing. And that's it, it's very subtle.
yeah.
Requires way more repetition than what you think. But
Yeah.
it's very subtle. And all of a sudden you start to recognize it. Now, I think as humans, this is an
Mm,
important piece is that we tend to skip over our wins. I like to tell my clients and people like take a moment to stack those wins because when doubt comes up the next day, because it will, because you're human, when it comes up, you can recognize that you've been here before. You've come through this before. You've done this before. And you can stack those wins. So when I catch myself doing something that is different than how
mm,
I used to do it in the direction that I want to go, I will often stop and go, okay, that's a win. I'm going to stack that win. I'm going to stack that win. You know,
yeah.
we just finished a whole immersion that I led for 6 days. That was brand new. And so that was very different for my nervous system to adjust to because I've never done anything like that before.
Mm,
But I had a moment where I was almost in awe of the women who were there supporting each other and the support that I was receiving. So I was receiving the support, you know, it's somebody cooking food. We had somebody facilitating. We had somebody over here. We had the women were helping each other. And all of a sudden I just went, there's so much support in this room and that's so different from how I used to live my life.
mm,
I wasn't open to receiving that support because I would do it all by myself. And I actually went and sat down and just gave myself a moment to anchor it and pause and recognize that, like, it's safe to receive support. It is safe to be surrounded by that. So it sounds like it's a small little step, but those steps can really anchor in and create a shift by stacking those wins and recognizing how you're changing.
yeah. That's so true. And you do, like, when you said that it's a subtle change, it really is. Like, all of a sudden,
So
you're just like
subtle.
aware and you're like, I handled that differently, or I thought differently of that. It's like or you have like a different perspective of something, whereas before you
Mhm.
may have been a little bit more closed off or closed minded.
Yes.
I love
Don't
that.
skip over that. Like literally, honestly, if it's uncomfortable for you to pause and anchor in a win and stack that win for yourself, all the more reason to do it because you are
Yeah.
doing something that is changing and rewiring your subconscious mind. So every time you have the awareness that you're doing something different and you make a different decision, like you choose something different, you are reprogramming right in the moment. You're
Mm,
literally reprogramming. So, and all of that stacks up. And so
right.
sometimes it's as simple as, you know, one of the, if I can share one quick thing, like if you have a limiting belief or a thought that comes up that you know that doesn't serve you, but it shows up all the time, I often say it's like a bike wheel that's going and all the spokes are turning. You literally have to take a stick and throw it into the wheel. You have to
Yeah.
like interrupt the pattern completely so that you can see it. But as humans, what we do is we interrupt the pattern and then we criticize, shame, and judge ourselves for being in
Mhm.
the same spot. And you will never create change with shame, judgment, criticism. It will just won't happen. So see it. And I used to then start to attach a little bit of a sense of humor. It's like, wow, we're back here again. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. Interesting. How fast we did this again. And I would add a sense of humor, not self-deprecating, but add a sense of humor to it, then you can create that change. So I just wanted to share that piece of it because, you know, awareness is incredible. Everything starts with awareness, but we also have to create change and move forward.
Yes. Yeah. No, I agree. It's interesting, with I mean, I have definitely found myself in shame spirals or, just guilt or like and I guess it's shame, but like, like you're embarrassed. Like I've
Yeah.
had, maybe I'm very vocal along this, around the fact that I've like done a lot of inner work and everything, right? And yet maybe the physical manifestation of the inner work hasn't caught up. And so I get sometimes like ashamed or like really embarrassed if I'm like, okay, well, it's not there yet, so there must be something that I'm not doing right, or that I'm regressing. Maybe I'm still caught up in a particular thought pattern or behavioral pattern. And if I do and even if I voluntarily choose to regress,
Mhm.
and do a former behavior or something, like I'm like, Kelly, give yourself grace for that. Like it's okay. You're human. Like it's okay. But also sometimes it's met with like I can't tell anyone that I did that.
I know.
Because they'll be like, Kelly, you keep doing this. Like you say you've done all this work, but like it's nothing, it's not showing for it in certain ways. So that's just something that I've been working on, internally myself is like just it is what it is. Like no one's out there being perfect. Like I'm doing all
I
the
actually
work.
appreciate your honesty right now. I do because I think this is really important that we do this. I think it's very important that we have these slippery slopes. I had a client say to me on the last weekend, she's like, if somebody could see how much you coach yourself in the moment, you correct your words, like I think people think you have it all figured out. I'm like, but I never pretend to.
Right.
If and sometimes we can't control how other people perceive us, and unfortunately in social media sometimes even when we are honest and we are real, we are perceived in a different way, and that's not necessarily fair, but we can't control how they see us.
Right.
And I appreciate your honesty because I think that it's just recognizing like we're human too. We definitely have these moments, and I invite you to have, I call it little guardrails. Like if you have little guardrails, shame is a slippery slope guardrail for me. Like when it shows up, I'm like, oh, there you are. I see you again. Like I see you again. I know that you really would like to be in charge right now. And no, I make this joke that I have this clown car and all parts of me are always getting in the clown car. And shame, I know you're part of it. I know you've been part of it. You've been here for a long time. I'm not going to hate on past parts of myself because that never helps. And you can get in the clown car, but you're definitely not driving. You're
Yeah.
definitely not driving. You're part of me. I know it shows up, but if it's showing up on a regular basis, I need to do something differently before
Right.
it takes full charge again.
Absolutely. Yeah. I love that. Yeah. Put that shame in the trunk.
I always say
Here.
it can go in the back seat, but if you're not going to stop, you're getting in the trunk.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
I love that. Thank you. That was helpful.
Mhm.
I'll keep that in mind. Guardrails too.
I love
I
it.
love that. How did I kind of want to go back to, if you feel open to talk about it, your teen with the substance abuse and how that affected life for you.
You know what? It's a great question, and it's been a journey. I'm not gonna lie. My kids are they're older now, and we've gone through a lot of growth and changes together. I spent a long time actually really angry and frustrated. I'm gonna be totally honest. I was angry, frustrated. I was jealous that other people didn't have our story. Not that I would wish it on anyone, but I
Right.
kept feeling that. I must have done something wrong for this to happen. And I think that that's a normal thought process that a lot of women and moms go through. I think whether you have kids or not, for some reason, it's like we've signed this subconscious contract that we will fix, manage, and control everyone in our life to help and make everything smoother. And it's not even doable. It's not realistic at all. But it was very crushing for a long time. And I think that, when I often think back to those years, trying to navigate through a story that was this difficult, this volatile, this public, while also having family and people in our lives giving so much unsolicited advice, but not willing to help in those times, a lot of things had to burn away. And my husband said to me once, and I love this message, like when you're dealing with addiction, mental health, substance abuse, does not affect one person. It's a family. It's a
Yeah.
family disease. It affects everyone. And so during that time, oh my God, everything had to really burn away in order to find who we were. And the fact of even, if I can look back, the earlier version of me She could have never even imagined standing on stage and talking about her story. It didn't even make logical sense. And I'm glad I didn't listen.
Mhm.
Yeah. So as hard as those years were, and they still have hard times, they really do, they still have hard times. But as hard as those years were, how I've had to reframe it is that it led me into the work that I get to do today. Unfortunately, we cannot hate on all the parts of ourselves that we don't like and still love ourselves at the same time. It doesn't work that way. So I often look at it that it opened me up to do the work that I get to do today. And I can't imagine not doing this work that I get to do today. So it really did set me up to do this, but it changed me in ways that I actually think were necessary. I'm going to say it this way. I was very much a control freak, very, very much a control freak. Perfectionism, how did it look? What did I say? All of the things. And I wore such a shield of armor that most people, they would look at me and think, she's got her ducks all in a row. She doesn't need any help. And she's the strong one. And that worked for me for a long time. And then I always say our strengths eventually can become our weakness. And when I was in this really difficult time, that armor perfectionism side of me, she was slowly killing me, to be completely honest. She really was. And so I had to let a lot of things go because life was going in a direction that I could have never imagined. And through that work, I became a very different I'm so different than who I used to be. And I think that is a massive blessing because I don't think I would have survived if I would have couldn't have found a way to let go of that.
Wow.
Hmm.
Thanks for sharing that.
Hmm.
Mm. I can relate in some ways.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a mother, but as you were saying, like a whole family is affected and it is very, very true. There's
It is. And no matter what your situation, if you're in a situation where people are really giving you open criticism and judgment, it's hard to find your own way when you're receiving a lot of that outside
right.
criticism, judgment, and opinions. It really is. And I found myself kind of studying these standards and boundaries that, thank you for your advice. Are you offering to come and live in my house for a week so that I can maybe go somewhere else and sleep? Oh, you're not. Oh, I'm not interested. Thanks.
Right,
Thanks.
right,
I'm not interested. And as much as I'm sounding like a smartass, that's actually what I started to say.
right.
If you're
I like
not
that.
yep, if you're not willing to support me in this moment and you just want to throw some advice at me, not interested. I'm just not interested. And I often equate it to, Brene Brown's quote about the arena, like if they're not in the arena with you. I take that one step further because we all know in our life of sports, you can fit 40, 50,000 people in the arena.
Right,
Well, I often look at it and go like, are you in the arena on the floor with me, walking side by side with me while I walk through it, even walking in my shoes, right? Like that's very different. I will take advice and receive support from people who are walking beside me. I'm not, if you're in the 500s and you're not willing to come down to the floor and walk beside me, I'm not interested in your advice. I'm just not.
right, right.
Mhm.
Mm, I love that.
Those
Boundary,
are my
boundary.
frameworks. Yeah,
Yeah.
boundaries. Honestly, it helped. It really does help when, and so if you're listening and you're walking through a difficult time, can you set some kind of like parameters of who you're taking advice from? And then the other thing I want to share with this is that people are going to fall away. And they're going to fall away not because you're doing anything wrong. Your story is hitting something in them and they don't know how to process that.
Right.
They really don't know how to process that. I know in this time of online space, I've shared this story a few times, but in the online space, we're worried about getting a negative comment. Well, I had a friend come to my door and completely rip me apart for not fixing the situation. And I was like, what are we doing here? And I said, you know what I'm doing? I'm trying everything that I can. I cannot fix, manage, and control. I've done everything that I can. And I remember her saying, it's so hard to be your friend. And all of a
Because
sudden,
you didn't respond to a negative comment?
yeah, and because my story was too hard and it's too difficult and it's
Mm,
so hard to be your friend. And I remember stopping and thinking, you know what? I'm going to do you a favor. We're actually going to part ways. No hard feelings. We're literally going to part ways because I don't have it in me to manage your energy right now.
right.
So I never saw her again. Just like a very, very good friend. Never
Wow.
saw her again. But I think what's really important is that I got to a point that when somebody left because my story made them uncomfortable, it
Hmm.
made way for a new person. And when I look at who is in my life today, honestly, I would say majority of the people that are in my life today in my close circle, I probably didn't know 5, 7 years ago at
Wow.
all. So it's
Mm,
okay for people to fall away, right? Because I do think that we are a series of the seasons, reasons, and lifetimes. Like, not everybody is meant to be there the whole way through. And if you're in a difficult situation, please surround yourself with people who can hold space for you and who can support you.
yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I've learned it's my whole life growing up, my mom would always say, "You say you have so many friends right now, but I promise by the time you get to my age, you'll be able to count the number on your hand on your right hand."
On one hand, it's true.
And it is true. It is. It's funny because I even had a conversation with someone recently and they were like, "Oh gosh, Kelly, when you get married, I can't even imagine like your guest list." And I was like, what's really funny about that? That would actually like, you know, check. It would track, a few years ago I said, but like I don't know, just like since doing like the work and just being more my boundaries, more intentional about things, I said even my 40th birthday back in July, just a few months ago, I mean, there were a few exceptions, but I was like, the people that I have conversations with through call or text message on a regular basis, like I looked at my text messages and I
Yeah,
just went scrolling and I was like, okay, like these top 20 people are the people that are getting like the invite first. I talk to them on a regular basis. Like I
beautiful.
love being around their energy, all of that. And again, there were some exceptions to the rule. Um, but I was like, it felt so good to me to
Mm,
do that and not just be like, well, I'm going to invite my hairstylist because I really love it. Like when I talk to her and, it's like, no, like these, like the
mm-mm.
people that, and I even invited girls that don't even live in Atlanta. But I've been friends with these girls for anywhere from 5 to 10 years already. I see them once a year, once every 3 years or
Yeah.
something. But we're the ones who are sending each other little like Instagram messages, or just random texts like, hey, I'm thinking of you. And it's like,
Mm.
those are my people.
That's beautiful. They are your people. They are. That's beautiful. And you know those kind of friends where maybe you only talk to them a couple times a year, but you could literally drop right into conversation with them like there's no
Correct.
time has passed. Those are really special relationships.
Yeah, yeah, they definitely are. I know. I had dinner or not dinner, brunch with like my one of my best guy friends from high school. He's married, has 2 kids.
Hmm.
I haven't seen him in 3 or 4, maybe 5 years now. I don't know, something like that. But it's like every time I go home, most of the time I go home, I will try to like reach out to be like, hey, like, can we get together something? And his kids are in sports and all that. So we just haven't been able to, and or we've just had some, challenging times as a family. So I'm like, I'm not trying to like come home to leave to go see a friend. Like I'm there to like spend time with my parents and
Yeah.
just really nurture that. And, I'll of course explain that. And they're like, Kelly, it's fine. Like we have our own shit going on. Like it's totally fine.
Hmm.
But I was like, I cried when I saw my friend for brunch. Like I gave him a hug and I just started crying. And I was like, I'm sorry. I'm just like really happy to see you. Like I'm so glad that you made time for me
Oh,
today. Like
oh,
I
that's
was like, and also
beautiful.
like I know I've said this over like the 15 years that you guys have been together, but like I love your wife. Like the fact that she is like, I mean, we all went to high school together, so she knows me, but still, like, I was like, the fact that she's just okay, like letting her husband go have brunch with another
Yeah,
girl, like,
I
although
love that.
she knows me, but like, you never know. I just adored that. And I'm like, she's literally like one of my favorite, like,
Mm,
I love y'all together because of that. Like that she can just be like so trusting of you. She trusts me. And she she knows what our relationship is. And I just respect that so much from her. But anyways, back to what you're saying. It's just like the intentionality. And I have also, I feel like, come to a point where I'm just like, it doesn't serve me. I'm okay with it. And I don't feel a lot of like I don't know, sadness.
Mm-mm.
Like it's just like that just doesn't serve me. I love the memories we've created because I have that too. I've had some friends where I'm just like, we're just like not aligned as much anymore. And I'm okay with the distance between us. Like maybe
Mm-hmm.
it's not like a conversation that was ever had. It's just a parting of ways kind of mutually, naturally in a sense. But yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I love, but there hasn't, I think 10 years ago, I would have been like self-abandoning to get their relationship and have their
Yeah.
friendship. And now I'm just like, I can't, it's exhausting. It's like chasing a man, you know? It's like, I don't want to chase anymore. Like, I know my last name is that, but like, that is not what I'm about.
I don't
Like,
care. I don't care if my last name is Chase. I'm not chasing.
I'm not chasing. Yeah, I am attracting, being magnetic. That's it. Like, if you like it, you like what I'm about, then come. But
I love that. I think that we honestly that is such a big piece. I did spend a lot of time chasing, fixing,
yeah,
trying to explain to people, and now it's like, yeah, this is just actually not necessary. It's not
no.
necessary. I don't believe it is at all. And so I think it all starts with, leading
Yeah.
yourself and being clear on what you want. And your friend, I was thinking as you were saying that, like your friend, it's so beautiful because it's also showing you very healthy relationships. They
Right.
exist.
Mm-hmm.
We might not see a lot of them, but they do exist.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's so
Mhm.
true. It's a great example. It's proof that it does exist.
I mean, evidence. I think our brains, well, I know our brains are like, they are evidence seeking machines. Like we're
Yeah.
looking to make sense and evidence of things. So when we see, something that inspires us, a relationship, a person, how they carry themselves, I've had people say like your story, you inspire me to show me what's possible. I'm like, I actually don't do it to inspire you because inspiring doesn't move you. I want you to move. I want to show you what's possible.
Yeah.
It is possible to change your story.
It
And
is.
it is possible to change it even if the story doesn't change.
Mm. Ooh. Ooh, expand on that. What do you
I
mean?
know, I know. I
I
could
like
feel that one coming down. So
it.
it is possible. See, I spent a long time trying to change my story, and the story didn't change. I then learned I had to change myself so that I could change how I was responding to the story. And as a result, the story
Mm.
changed, even though the story never changed. So,
Yeah, yeah. Okay. I
does
gotcha.
that make
Yeah.
sense?
I hear you. Yes. I'm
Yeah,
same.
it took a long time to learn that. It really, really did. But in the process, like the story didn't actually change because I did.
Mm.
I made it change. I changed myself. We
Right.
get to choose what we say yes to, our boundaries, what's in our space. And, at the end of the day, when you asked me earlier to go back to those years, I spent a lot of time in like anger, like I said, anger, jealousy, frustration, and waiting for my circumstances to change so that my life could change. That's
Right.
literally what I felt like, waiting for this to change so my life could change. And through the process found that it's not about that. You have to learn, like when you're sitting in that space of blaming others and waiting for external circumstances to change, you're at the complete opposite end of ownership. And ownership and radical responsibility is, how can I lead myself and change regardless of what's happening around me?
Right.
That was probably my biggest shift. And I mean, my podcast is called Own Your Choices, Own Your Life. It literally came from that realization that
Wow.
no matter what was happening around me, how could I own the choices that I made every day so that I could create the life that I wanted?
Yeah, that's so true. It's so true. It's interesting you said that too. A recent episode I had actually um just relaunched, but I recorded it a few years ago. But
Mm-hmm.
that was literally like the clip was like when I like kind of like don't take like I didn't need to take blame, but when I took responsibility
Yeah.
for like I wasn't to blame, but I took responsibility for it and everything changed like her family relationship. And she was like, my sister helps with this, my mom and I are this, my dad and I are this, like, and she was like, literally, me just taking ownership and taking responsibility, it changed everything. And that
Hmm.
was like one of her biggest realizations was, hey, like get out of the victim, take responsibility and change your life.
Yeah. It
So
honestly does. That is the turning point.
yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
I love that. I love that so much. It's funny because like I'll say things sometimes where I'm, let's say I've been dating someone, right? And like,
Mhm.
and you go and you have the girl talk and say they're orange or red flag, and then the girls are like, screw that guy. And they get so like heated and oh, if I ever see that guy, I'm gonna blah blah. And I'm like, well, you're not gonna do anything. First of all, I said because it takes two to tango, like I'm the one who keeps allowing it to happen. And they're like, well, Kelly, you're, and I'm like, no, like, I'm taking
Mhm.
responsibility for my part. I know that this would not continue if I didn't allow it to continue. I can cut it
Well,
off. I just haven't. Whoops.
good for you. Good for you. That is a moment where not a lot of people have that
Yeah.
point. We do get to decide how others treat us.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I
We do.
know that that is not always easy to hear, but we do get to decide. And sometimes that means that if you have people in your life who don't treat you well, you get to decide how much of you do they get? How much exposure do they get? And I know that that can be hard when people say, but my family, you don't understand. Well, no, I do. Like I do. We all have our pieces. But if it takes from you and stops you from being the best version of yourself, something has to shift.
Yeah. Yeah.
Something has to shift.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
Absolutely. Can you, are you, with like the control and the perfectionism, how did you shift that? You said you're like not the same person, right?
Mm-mm.
So what tools, like if anyone's listening, they're like, yeah, that's me too. I am a control freak as well. Like, but what maybe tangible tools can you give them or some tips, I guess, as far as to like how can they start to shift that?
That's a great question. So with perfectionism, again, Brene Brown quote where she talks about that if perfectionism is in the driver's seat, then in the passenger seat is shame and in the back seat is fear. There is something that we are afraid of allowing others to see in us or about us that it's easier to put up this wall, this armor of I'm perfect and I'll just keep going until it's perfect. It's actually a really low standard. You will never, it's not something that you can achieve, right? It's not a high standard in a good way. It's a low standard. So perfectionism is, if it is something that you are really struggling with, then I would first encourage you to not call like you are experiencing perfectionistic behaviors.
Yeah.
It's not a
Okay.
label, right? It's
Right.
not a label, right? It's that you are experiencing it and they serve a purpose. So what purpose are they serving for you? And this can be just a conversation you have with yourself. For me, it's that it was never safe to ask for help. It was always being praised as being the independent one who could just figure it out herself. And then the flip side of that was that I didn't know how to ask for help. I didn't know how to receive help because I never let anyone in. And
Mm.
then when the world got really small, all of a sudden I was feeling super isolated, and that was why. So I would start with questions and asking yourself, like, for what purpose? Why? Like, what does this exist for? Don't ask yourself why. For what purpose? What is it that I'm afraid that others will find out? And what would
Mm.
it feel like to allow myself to receive support instead? And so I had all of those perfectionism tendencies for a long time. And through the process, through a lot of this work, you can release it somatically through, tapping hypnosis. There's a lot of different somatic techniques that you can use because it lives in your body. It is something, if you feel that contraction come up that it's not safe to be seen. I mean, people will know me and know that flawed, what we consider the flawed version of ourselves. It's actually the real version of ourselves. Then there's a lot of techniques that you can use to release that. And then it's also an invitation that, I just want to say this with so much love. Perfectionism is the most unrelatable thing ever.
Mm.
So, I've had clients say, I can't do it the way you do it. I can't do it. I can't get it perfectly. And I'm like, well, what is something that you see in me? And they're like, well, you just put your stuff out. You don't think twice about it and you don't care if there's a mistake. And I'm like, okay, so it's not the perfectionist that you're actually attracted to. right? It's not.
They're
It's
messy
like,
action.
it's a messy action, right? It's a messy action. So when I wrote my book in 2017, and it published, if you've ever written a book, there's so much editing that happens, and sometimes mistakes are still, it happens. And I had somebody bring my book into my workplace. It was a very vulnerable story that I shared. It was called When She Stopped Asking Why, and I shared my journey as a parent in this process. And I honored my kids the entire time. Very vulnerable story. I shared a lot about myself, like way more than I thought I was going to, but I did. And somebody brought my book into my workplace with full of sticky notes, highlighted with where my mistakes were. So can you imagine somebody coming in? Yeah, coming in with my book in my workplace saying, here's your book with all of your mistakes. I think it's very important you fix them. And I was like, pardon me, like I'm just in this space. And I remember saying to her, in my most vulnerable story, what you took out of that was where my mistakes were.
Right.
And she said, no, it's just that it's a published book. You should like, it's very important to fix this. It should be important to you. And I said, see, here it's important to you.
Right.
If me getting my book out into the world with some mistakes gives others permission to know that they don't have to do it perfectly, that's a win-win. And so I actually think a lot was released during that process. And it was very freeing. So now I love it when people message me and they're like, "You publish books. You have a spelling mistake." They do, seriously. You have a spelling mistake in your post. I'm like, great, it's on brand. Like we don't do things perfect here. We just don't. It's not what we do. And I do want to say when it comes to perfectionism, please know for everyone, you will never be criticized by someone who's doing more than you.
Right. Correct.
You are criticized by somebody who your action is triggering something that they're not doing. I say that with so much love.
So
This
true.
person who criticized me, and in a very loving way, I think she meant very well. Um, if you're going to be criticized by somebody, it's because they're not doing what you're doing.
Right.
And the fact that you just go take this messy action and you're trying to do it, it triggers something in them. And then the other thing is that you're going to be criticized by people who want to keep you safe. They don't
Mm-hmm.
want you to be hurt. They want you
Yep.
to stay safe and protected. And so when you go do something new that you haven't done before, it feels scary for them because they don't want you to be hurt. So please
Right.
recognize that doesn't mean you can't do it. See the world from their lens,
Right.
and this is all it is they just don't
Right.
want you to be hurt.
Yeah. And don't tell them about it.
You do not have to tell everybody anything. You really don't. And so if you're like worried about doing, you get the idea. Like I said, I got the idea for a book and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so excited. I'm going to do this. And everybody was like, have you lost your mind? Have
Yeah.
you lost your mind? And I was like, maybe I had, I don't know. And I stopped for a while. I was like, no, I know I feel called to do this. And so if you're afraid of the perfectionist piece or what people are going to think or say, I often say, play the movie till the end. If it's the end of my life, will I regret if I didn't do this? And if the answer is yes, then I say yes and I figure it out and I let everyone else fall by the wayside.
I love that.
Yeah.
That's so, I mean, with everything, like asking yourself that question with anything that we do in life. I love that.
Will I regret it if I don't do it? And so honestly, playing full out is one of my values, which sounds so strange, but it really is. I want if I have the idea and I believe it is for me, then messy action it is. We just keep going.
I love that.
Hmm.
So good.
Hmm.
Ah, so good. Is there anything um else that you feel called to share with my listeners right now before we wrap it up?
I think the thing I would say is that no matter where you are today, like your story can change so much in a period of time. And I know what it's like to have moments where it feels like I don't know if I can make it past this and I don't know what it's going to look like. And I think that we tend to underestimate, what is it, that quote? We overestimate what we can do in 1 year, and then we underestimate what we can do. Did I say that right? Just a second.
Mhm.
If it was my own show, I'd say edit because I think I just butchered that. We
We're messy here. We don't care.
All right, exactly. There's exactly it. But we tend to underestimate the steps and the actions. Like we don't give ourselves enough credit. And with repetition and consistent action and moving forward and taking those tiny steps and seeing what those maybe those limiting beliefs are, seeing those parts of ourselves that have just tried to keep us safe, we can create massive change. I remember that messy action in 2020. I felt like I was going nowhere, like sludging through everything. And I look back and it's like, oh my gosh, my life is totally different than it was 5 years ago. But I wasn't seeing it then because I felt like the results weren't happening fast enough. And they don't ever happen fast enough. They happen when we're ready to see them and receive them. But stack those wins every day because it will help you in those moments when you're having those low moments and thinking that you're not going anywhere.
I love that.
Hmm.
So true. Celebrate all the moments.
All of them. All of them.
All of them. Because even the hard times, celebrate them because it's a gift. It's a lesson. There's something going on that we can
They're,
appreciate.
it's all teaching us something.
Yeah.
It's all teaching us something. I really do believe in that everything is teaching us something. And when I'm having those difficult moments, I don't like to use the it's happening for you because I think when you're in the middle of the hard part, the for you feels like I deserve this. That's a subconscious thing, but it's just, I do believe everything is teaching us something. And
Yeah.
sometimes I like to stop and it's like, what is this teaching me? What do you want me to know? And there's always a lesson in there.
Yeah. So true. Oh,
Mhm.
that's so good. This was great. How can people find you?
Well, I have a very long last name, as you as you might have heard.
Yeah.
So I made it very easy for you. Everything is Marsha Van W. So my website is Marsha Van W. My Instagram is Marsha Van W. And if you started typing my name in Google now, it would come up because it's a long last name and it shows up. And my podcast is called Own Your Choices, Own Your Life.
I love that.
Mhm.
I love that. And you have the one book or have you
I,
met? Yeah.
we've actually have I have the solo book of When She Stopped Asking Why, and I have led three collaborative books. I have published in collaborative books, so like I think a total of 7 times been published.
Amazing.
Yeah, and I'm in the process of working on my second solo, which is yeah, it's all about being unbothered.
I love that.
Yeah, when you spend your life as a perfectionist, numb is where it's at. And now I'm like, no, no, it's not numb.
Right.
Unbothered means that you can still feel all things at once. You can have a contraction and expansion and learn how to regulate so that you can hold it all.
I love that.
Hmm.
Oh, that's exciting.
Yeah, thank
All
you.
right. Well, you have to
Thank
let
you.
us know when that comes out.
I
That's
definitely will. I definitely will. Thank you so much for having
yes,
me.
thank you
And
for being here.
I love our conversation.
Me too. Me too. I love it. Thank you.